Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Ken Marr and here I'm posting free Linux tutorials. Most of you have seen this screen before, so I won't dwell on it. If you come here from YouTube and you don't have a link to the PDF notes, there it is there. And if you are new to this screen, have a read through my unique selling points. Just touch on the ad hoc video tutorials. The white one's the one I've done so far. You'll find them in the ad hoc playlist. Arch is next. And today in the introduction playlist, we're doing backup and restore using tar and Cpio. Although I also touch on how to use DD to create a bootable USB drive. I'm going to use the Mint 20 VM for this, and I'm logged in as Train1, looking at Train1's files. You can use the CentOS VM or the Ubuntu VM or your own machine if you've got files you want to back up. VM's a safer way to do these things. Here's the PDF of the course notes. This is section 8, backup and restore, and these are the usual links. I recommend these three. So in this section you will learn how to use backup utilities like tar and Cpio, do both full and incremental backups, use compress utilities such as gzip and bzip2, and use DD to create a bootable USB drive. Tar stands for tape archive. We don't back up to tape now. Everything's a file on Linux, so you can just write to disk files if you want to. In the real world, if you've got servers, you should back up to tape and take them offline to a fireproof safe somewhere. And in fact, administrators use two commands called dump and restore, which I'll cover if I do an admin course later. So backups are, it says here, the only practical way of recovering corrupted or deleted files on the system, because there's no recycle bin. Saying that, if you use Dropbox as I do, all your files are synced to the cloud. So if I delete a file by accident, I can get it back within 30 days. Thank you, Alexa. Where was I? Sorry about that. So it's a simple command to use. The syntax is tar, and then usually I use CVF. C says, oh, be quiet. C says create a tar archive. You can use Z, as I will in a moment, to create the output as a zipped file. V runs in verbose mode, which means it shows you what it's doing. And the F is the file name we're going to write to. And the F should be followed directly by the file name. If I put CFV, it won't work. So I'm going to back up to a directory called backup, which already exists. If there isn't a backup directory, you can use TMP instead, but there is one on the VMs. As I'm backing up Train1, I'm going to call it Train1, and as it's a tar file, usually you put .tar. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to Linux like it does in Windows, but it shows me when looking at an LS listing that it's a tar file. Now, if you don't put anything else, I like that, cowardly refusing to create an empty archive. So we haven't told it what to back up. Now here, you can put a directory. So we're in Train1, so we could put home Train1, but home Train1 is dot. So normally I would put a dot, and that will back up all my files. Yeah, it's done. Now back over here, G will look up later for incremental backups. You can specify a different directory to the one you're in using C. You can preserve permissions, and you can exclude certain files. And as it says there, the minus is optional. So if I do the same thing again, if I do the same thing again this side, and this time, to show you the difference, I'll take the V out, put a minus, and that will back them up again and overwrite the files that were there. So there's the example I've just done, minus CVF to back up to tar. If it's not there, like I said, use temp. If you want to use gzip, and again I don't need to put the V in there, I know it'll do it, I can put a Z. The output file name should reflect the zip utility you're using, because you can use different ones. Z uses gzip, so on the end, by convention, you put gz, so we can see it's a gzip file. And then if I do an ls -l on backup, there are my backups. There are already some backups there that I did the other day as the KDM user, and these ones are neat. They've got the date and time in. I'll show you how to do that in a minute, but these are the ones that I've just created. Train one, and that one, the zipped one and the unzipped one. If you want to specify directory, so if you're in the habit of changing files in etc, then what I often do is back up the etc directory. Now I can do that with czf, back it up to etc.tar.gz. Instead of putting a dot, which would back up everything here, you put -c/etc space dot, and in effect it changes into etc and runs all the files in there. Actually, just to prove it's doing it, let's put a V, and then we can see the files that it outputs. There we go. Now, I've got errors here. That's because I didn't do what I've put in the notes, which was use sudo. So if I run it again, it'll overwrite the file that's there. I can do sudo tar, put in my password, I didn't like that. I'll tell you what, I think it can't overwrite the file that's already there, so we'll do etc1. That's better, that worked. So now we've got a backup of etc, which is backed up by train 1, and a backup of etc which was backed up by root. Now, a better way of doing this is to use a date stamp, because if you rerun a backup, so if we look at the backup there, that was taken at 8:24. It's now 8:27. If I run that backup again, find which one that was. It was train 1. I should have searched for it. That one. And we have a look. So that one's now taken at 8:27. So if the file's already there, by default it overwrites it. You can stop it, do it well. You can't stop it doing that, but you can do multiple backups like this with different date stamps. So what this one does, the backup will include my log name. So I'm currently logged in as train 1, and also a date stamp. That date stamp there, if I copy it, cancel that and paste it, returns month, day, hours, and minutes. And what that means is you can run the same command every minute and get a different dump. So if I go back and I'll copy that again and paste it here and run it. I mean, it's now 8:38. Have a look again in backup. And there's my dump, taken at 11:28. Now as soon as the clock hits 11:29, I can take another dump and it won't overwrite the first one. I'll get a new dump. There we go, it's 8:29 now. Dump it again, run the ls, and there's another dump for 8:29. And if you put that in a script, you could put it on the cron tab to run perhaps once a day, in the evening if your machine's on, during the day when you're using it if it isn't. So let's have a look at viewing an archive. Now I'm going to use the simplest one to save typing because they've all got the same thing in. So I'm going to look at that one. In fact, what I'll do, so I've got a lot of stuff there I don't want, is I'm going to remove from backup all the backups using sudo, and then doing that -L on backup. And then I'm going to search backwards for train 1, and we'll use the simple one because it saves typing. We can only zip them up to save space, obviously. There we go. So we've done a backup of all our files, these files, and we want to look at the table of contents in the backup. And the way you do that is you use tvf over here. So go back to the backup here. Don't need a dot. In fact, what we're going to do is pipe it into less because it's quite long. And instead of CF, we want T for table of contents, V for verbose, F, that's the file. Remember, the minus is optional. There's my backup. And over here, you get the relative path name of each file it's backed up. So you can go forward with F here, or up and down with the arrow keys. Get to the end. If you want to find a particular file, use grep. And somewhere in there is old file. There it is, it's backed up. So we'll look at restoring a file. One thing to note there, you don't have to unzip the zip file to use it, which is quite clever. So restoring a file, you use XVF. So if I want to get old file back, well, let's remove it first. You don't have to follow along with this. There's an exercise on this later on, but it's up to you. So old file's gone. Let's get it back. If we go back to the tar, we don't want grep, although we did want old file. I usually put the full file name as you see it in the listing, /old file, and I want to extract it. So like I said, that's optional. XVF, and that's got the old file back there. Simple stuff, really. So suppose you want to get back lots of files. You can get them back using wildcards. So if I go back and suppose I remove everything there, I mean, if you've got an alias, you can unalias it. I don't think there is one, but I don't want it being interactive. Let's remove everything that begins with a T and then do an ls. So I've lost everything that was in temp, and there were several files in there, and text1. I can get them back by using a wildcard. So I bring back my tar. At this end, I could put /t**, but I'm in the habit of putting these things in single quotes. So that will attempt to get back all the files that begin with a T. Now it doesn't work, and it tells you why. It says use --wildcards to enable pattern matching. On some systems it does work. I think on most Linux systems it doesn't. So the --wildcards you need to put there. There it is. So here --wildcards. And there they are again. So there's temp and its contents and text 1. If there's no wildcards option, what you can do, I mean this is often the case on Unix, as a workaround, what you do is you run your tar, just do a TF of backup, and again I'll use train1.tar, and this time I'm going to pipe it into grep and look for all the files that begin with ./t, but you have to scrape the dot because it's a special expression in grep, if you remember, and that will give me all the files I want to restore. Now those files exist at the moment, so what I need to do is do my RM again, it's the wrong RM, and get rid of all the files that begin with a T. And now what you do, got this command, yeah, you do an xvf of the same tar file, but you don't use grep, you pass it that list of file names. So that list of file names was $, well, you pass it by putting in dollar brackets, so it's tar tf / backup, etc. I should have copied it. train1.tar piped into grep, and again don't forget to escape before stop, /t quote bracket. It doesn't work. It did actually work because there are the files back, and there's temp. I'm not sure why it's come up with the error. I might look at that later on. Let's not worry about that because you won't have to do that unless you're using Unix. Let's go on and look at a review exercise. Now that runs through most of what I've just done, so there's no solution for this, but it says back up all your files to a zip tar archive, examine the archive with ls and file, view the contents with tvf, delete some files like old file for instance, or you can choose one of the others, restore the deleted file, check this there, delete all the files that begin with a particular character, or T is a good example to use, and restore the files and display the files to confirm that they've been restored. So what I suggest you do is pause the video at this point, and if you haven't been following along with what I've been doing, have a go at that. So next I'm going to look at incremental backups. First of all, let's have a look at what I've got in backup. Only that one. What we'll do is we'll remove that one. For now, we'll start again. Okay. An incremental backup, right, if there's a large amount of data to backup, a backup might take a long time. Also, if you've only got a few files that changed since the last backup, you don't need to back up everything else. Here you can use an incremental backup. So initially what you do is you take what's called a full level 0 backup, and here you specify the -G option like this. So this is tar CZF, so it's not going to display everything, there's no V, but it is going to zip it. It's going into backup with my log name, the date and time, .tar.gz, and then -G says in the backup directory create a file called $logname_snar. Now this file is called a snapshot file, and snar is the suffix that is used generally. There we go. So if we go back and look at ls backup, actually what we need to look at really is ls backup with -L. Right, there's our full backup and there's our snar file. Now look over back here. It says once you've taken a full backup, you can then back up only those files which have been modified since the last backup by just running the same backup command again. Let me do it, you'll see what I mean. Let's, there's an example down here. There's the backup, there's the listing. Let's change old file by just adding something to the end of the file. Some of the other miles might change because we're using a Windows environment on here, an X Windows environment, and there are a lot of dot files which get updated by the system. Now if I take another backup just using the same command, so if it's in the script you just run the script again, provided we move forward a minute, so 90, yes, we're on 901. Now what I've got is my original backup, which was 229k, and my new backup, which is a lot smaller. The reason I'm getting like that is I've got an alias of ls in here which does -h, and if you use -h you get things in human readable form. It's easier to see that it's smaller actually if I do it like that, which uses the ls command, and you can see that this is much smaller than that one. But the clever thing is I ran the same command again, so if it's in a script you can put that on the cron tab and just run it. Now let's have a look at what's in the backup. Not the first one, but the second one. What should be in there is everything that's changed since the first backup. So we can view the contents like that. Now what you've got to remember when you do this is that if you're using a timestamp, the file name will change. So you can't just look at the file name. We can't just use train1*. What we need to put in there is the actual file name we want to look at. So if we go back, take that out, and we won't need the less either actually, because there won't be many files in there, but we'll leave it there. So we're going to look at that one. So that's the file name we want. Copy, paste it in there, and go. That's interesting. Why has it done that? Bit daft, I forgot the end of the file name. .gz, I should copy that as well, shouldn't I? There we go. So there's old file. But it's also backed up all these files, all these dot files, which also changed. I'm not sure why it's backed those directories up, because they didn't change, but I'm not sure how they could have changed. But that's the idea. So it saves you a lot of space if you do incremental backups, And like I said, you can just run, I can run another incremental backup by rerunning that, having a look at what's in there, and I've got another incremental backup. It makes restore more difficult because you've got to look at the incremental backups to find what you want, but you can use grep to find things. And if you want to have a go at that, have a go at a full and an incremental backup. Again, there's no exercise solution for that. And the next thing we'll look at is compressing an archive. So if I want to use gzip and gunzip to zip files, actually it doesn't have to be an archive, I can just show you here. The biggest file we've got here is log file. And I can compress it by zipping it. So you just say gzip log file. And now when I do an ls, it's not like Windows, it doesn't create an extra file. It replaces log file with a new file which it calls logfile.gz. Automatically, I didn't specify the gzec, and it's shrunk considerably. And if you want to get it back again, you use gunzip, but this time you do specify the file name. So I could put an asterisk there, but I could put .gz and go back here, and it's gunzip, and there's my file back as it was. Dead simple. There are other zip utilities you can use, such as bzip and bzip2 and xz, and you unzip them with bunzip2 and unxz. There are also associated commands for looking at zip files like zcat, zless and zgrep, which means you don't have to unzip the file before you look at it. Moving on to Cpio. Cpio is like tar. It's a bit more difficult to use, I think, because you have to find the list of input file names, pipe it into Cpio with options, and then redirect the output. So here's an example of taking a backup with Cpio. So it's find all the files in the user, which you can use with find dot minus name asterisk. Actually, those quotes don't look like quotes, they look like the PDF equivalent of a quote. So we'll replace them before we run it. And then pipe that into Cpio with minus OV uppercase BC. So O is create an archive, V is verbose mode, so it displays the files, B is block the output records, and C is create an archive in ASCII character format. If you do that, it makes them portable between machines. I used to move files from Linux to Unix like this using ASCII character. So if I run that, it will display all the files. And then if we do an ls -l again on backup, there's Cpio. If you want to get things back, IT is a table of contents, and IV, sorry, yes, I without the T will restore files. So to get them back, some files, let's look at the table of contents first. So to do that, you run Cpio and you pass it TVC. So I for input, T for table of contents, V for verbose, C for ASCII format, we don't need the B this time, and we're passing in our backup So less than, and at this end we want to pipe that into less. So we should see the table of contents. There we go. Similar to tar, but the file names don't have a / in front of them in Cpio. And then to get a file back, you use the same thing without the T. So here, or in the example in the notes there, I'm using I, V, so it sees what it's bringing back, B, CD. Actually, that's daft. What I should have done was deleted some files first, wouldn't I, if I'm going to get some files back. So if we do removing everything again, that begins with a T. Temps directory, so we need remove -r. So we've lost those now. Get our Cpio back. Here we want I, V for verbose, B, block the output records. I'm not sure you need that actually. C for ASCII format, and if you want to, if there are any subdirectories to be created, use a D. And in there you can put T asterisk, so we want all the files that begin with a T, and then pipe your Cpio into that, but we don't need the less. There we go, that's got the files back. It's the same sort of thing, it's just a lot more fiddly than tar. And usually I tack it on the end of the notes, so there's no exercises. And then lastly, I'm going to show you how to use DD, Disk Destroyer. Just be careful when you use this, because it's very easy to overwrite a disk using DD. But it is useful, and people often use it for creating a USB drive with an ISO on it. Now I'm going to do this on my machine, so what I'll do for now is I'll save Mint, find a USB stick, got several here, and I'll put one in. And there it is, you've just what you want to do. I don't want to do anything really. I'm going to drop down this thing. If you haven't seen this before, this is G-U-A-K-E. It's like Quake with a G on the beginning, which is a rather neat terminal emulator. I can use Control and arrow to make it bigger, which I like. You can do things like split the screen, so now I've got two. Actually I can drop it down, like it's not very good at that, it tends to go a bit bananas if you try and move it around the screen. There we are, I've got two screens now, I don't want one, and it's got preferences which you can use from there. I'll make the screen a bit bigger. So first of all it says you need an ISO image and a USB drive. So this is my own user, and I've got a directory called ISO, which contains my ISOs. My USB drive, well, check it's been mounted. There it is, SDB. And then what you do, actually I've got a script which helps me do this. It's called make USB. All it does is go to the ISO directory, find what's there, and list out the DD command, which I'm going to use for each of the ISOs that it's found. So here it says do a DF, assume that the USB drive is SDB, change the directory with the ISO file, which is where I am, and then run this dd command. So what you say is sudo dd status equals progress, so it shows you what you're doing, your input file, your Linux ISO name, your output file is /def/sdb, and the block size. If you use a large ISO, it might take a minute or two, so if I did it for Windows, which is quite big, it will take a while, but I'm going to do it for something simple like gparted. That one there, that ISO is gparted. So if I copy that there and paste it. Now, this is a point where you have to think. I did this recently and I stupidly put SDA there and instead of SDB, and even though I abandoned it after it started, it was too late and it overwrote my hard drive, so I had nothing left. So like I said, be careful. There's a warning at the top of the page here which says it's easy to do, but you can just as easily overwrite a disk drive. So make sure that you're writing to SDB. I take no responsibility if you overwrite the wrong drive. Password. That's done. That was very short, so it doesn't take long to do that one. I'm not sure which the next shortest one is. But if you're doing it for a real one, it shows you the progress as it goes. So let's do it for, I think Anarchy is not very big, that one. Anarchy, I'm going to do a post on this. It's for installing Arch, the easy way. So I will be doing a post on that. Oh, that didn't work, did it? Let me try that again. Copy. Paste. I'll just show you that. No, it doesn't help. Anyway, if you do it for a bigger one, I wanted to show you that it shows the progress of it goes. Copy. Paste. I'll do this one and then I'll freeze the video while it's running, come back to it. There we go. So it clocks up the progress and it shows you what it's doing. So I'll stop that and come back when it's finished. There it is finished. Records in, records out, and I now have a USB drive which will boot Linux Mint. However, saying that, I think it's much easier to use Ventoy to create USB sticks, because Ventoy, I can put all of this on one stick, provided they fit. If I had a 32 gigabyte stick, I could get them all on. I've done a video for that, if you're interested. Have a look at that. Right, that's the end of this. So I'll close this down, which you do with F12, and I'll go back to the slides in Impress. So next week I'll be back with section 9, file permissions, and that just leaves section 10, Vim Advanced, although I'll carry on doing ad hoc videos. Last page you've all seen and ignored before. If you want to help me in developing future courses, do subscribe, like and comment, recommend and share me on Facebook, and send feedback, questions and suggestions via email. As it says there, a supporter is worth 1,000 followers. But to be honest, this is falling on deaf ears. I'll be back next week. Until then, bye bye.